Hello there, and welcome to StoryStream, the Vancouver Public Library's story time for adults. My name is Jonna, and I'm coming to you from the Montalbano Family Theatre on Level 8 here at the Vancouver Public Library. The Vancouver Public Library is located on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. If you're interested in finding out whose land you're on, please visit whose.land/en. Now today we have a very special guest, the Vancouver Public Library's Writer-in-Residence for 2021, Chris C.C. Humphreys. Today he'll be reading his story, Where the Angels Wait. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, my name is Chris Humphreys, otherwise known as C.C. Humphreys, and I'm the current Writer-in-Residence at the Vancouver Public Library. You're in my office right now. I have been asked to read some short stories, and kindly the Vancouver Public Library has allowed me to read a couple of my own short stories. And we're going to start today with one of the only short stories I've ever written. I'm not primarily known as a short story writer. And it's called Where the Angels Wait. And it was published in a magazine called Pulp Literature. The very first edition of Pulp Literature, which is now run into at least 15 or 16 issues. It's a wonderful, small literary magazine run by great people. If you get a chance to check out their website, Pulp Literature. And you can download these issues electronically, or you can order them on paper. They specialize in short fiction and also extracts from longer pieces of work, and they've always found some very interesting writers. This is the very first pulp literature, and my story, happily, is the very first one. I was asked if I had short stories by my friends who run pulp literature, and I'm a novelist. I'd written some short stories back in the day as practice, really, and so I thought, well, I'll dig them out of the bottom drawer that all writers have, and I dug this one out, Where the Angels Wait, it's called, and I realized that I'd changed quite a lot in the 20 years since I'd written it as a novelist. You know, I'd learned a few more. So I said, well, you can have it, but I need to really work on it. And I dived in and edited and cut about a third, changed the tense, things like that. And I think made it more accessible. And so they were able to publish it. The story itself, Where the Angels Wait, is not exactly drawn from my life, but there are some parallels. It's set in Granada in 1986. My father died in Granada in Spain, southern Spain, in 1986, and I was in Los Angeles at the time, and I heard very late that he wasn't well and tried to make it and didn't make it. So there was an element of unfinished business between us, I suppose. He wasn't a conventional man, and he didn't want a conventional funeral in any way. So I never quite knew what had happened to him after he passed on. So this story was a little bit of the speculation on that. So here we go. Where the Angels Wait, C.C. Humphreys. Granada, Andalusia, Spain, August 1986. Sitting on the edge of the bed now, listening. A door opened, shut. Someone has come and gone, that much is certain. They've hidden them, and he must find them. Unless they didn't leave. Hello? No reply. He has to start. The drawers? Too obvious, but he tries a couple. The cushions? He pulls them off the sofa, feels down the back and side, moves carefully, because if they are there, what state might they be in? He finds a crumb-covered coin, nothing else. On the high shelves, then, at the back of the cupboard, rolling in dust, or in a jar, in the bureau, pickled, floating like onions. With others? Alone? Alone, yes, has to be. He starts to move quicker. Grapes on the table, that's frightening. Eat one, too risky. Time's nearly up. Pull back the sheets, grope under the pillows. Who's there? He lies back down. There's no one there, he says, challenging the dark. He sits up. He knows where they are. His father is in the doorway, making it look small, and he has them exactly where they should be. Looking for these? Dad says, and starts to squeeze his eyeballs from his face. Off the bed, groping for a light, blundering in an unfamiliar dark to a wall, a door, a switch, filling the room with yellow, running to the window, pulling back the thick curtains, he thrusts his head out into the fierce sun and furnace air, and the heat brings him back. He remembers where he is. It takes him longer to remember why. 6 p.m. Jet lag muzzles his head like a warm, wet towel, and he can't figure if home is ahead of Granada or behind. No, behind. It's 9 in Vancouver now. Gwen will be getting Sunday breakfast, French toast, wearing her blue smock to protect her church clothes. If he was there, they'd eat. Then she'd take the smock off. Coming? She'd ask. Nothing to confess, he'd say. He'll call, catch her before she goes, but after a shower. He wants to make sense when he speaks to her. Before the shower, though. Tom kneels by the bed. He always needs pictures to go with the words. But the only one that comes is his father, another doorway. 8 years old, pajamaed knees to floorboard. He's been there a while. Got to get Dad's face exact. Then Mum, then Malk, then Dozy Dog, his white coat and velvet eyes. His father bursts in, whiskey breath and showy love. You don't need all that nonsense, tomboy. Only faith you need's in yourself. Nicotine fingers pulling sheet to chin. I pray for you, Daddy, and Mummy and Malk and Dozy Dog, all of us together. You pray then, makes you happy. Don't go, Daddy. I'm right here, son. Not going anywhere. Liar. The shower dribbles on him, making him miss home all the more. Sweat instantly pricking his skin. He dials, and she's there. Concern disguised in tales of the last 2 days. The ordinary worked into comedy. He laughs, missing her. 10 minutes, then he's just hanging on for her voice. Guilt for the waste of money. Guilt for being unable to tell her why he's there. She knows it has to do with his father, needing to go to him dead, as he failed to go 3 years before when he was dying. Knows it has to do with the dreams. She'd held him often enough these last months, shushed his cries, talked him back to bed. She doesn't know about the eyes. He hangs up, dresses. He knows where he wants to be for the sunset, had watched it from there twice before. 20 years ago, the Hitchhiker. 10 years, the honeymooner, sharing his wandering past with the woman he'd given up wandering for. In the Albertine, the old Moorish quarter, he only loses his way once on a steep cobbled street among the children skipping rope, the piebald dogs and skinny cats. Soccer commentaries blare from hole-in-the-wall bars. Once, glimpsed behind an oak door half ajar, a pocket oasis lures him, blue-tiled and cool, water dripping from pots of plants and flowers. Beyond it, though, at the summit, he sees the spire of San Nicolas. There's another invitation within its doors, candlelight flicker and incense-laden air. But Tom walks on to El Mirador, the place of watching. He's just in time. Across the ravine, the last of the sun burns the walls of the Alhambra fire red, then seeps through levels of pink, bleeds through the single cloud, bruising it from purple to grey. Others watch, like shades from his past. A young couple in the moment and each other's arms, a backpacker, scraggle-bearded, whip-thin, nose to guidebook, already seeking cheap lodgings. It's when Tom turns to leave that he notices the old man crumpled on the patio's parapet, eyes closed and face turned toward the departed sun, a white stick beside him. Tom takes a step away, and the man's eyelids slide up onto white. He gropes for his stick, swishes it down hard. Dinero, por el amor de Dios! Emptying his pocket into the man's claw hand, Tom hurries away. half asleep, dream-laden. 4:15, hands behind his head. He waits for dawn. He has what his father called a Spanish breakfast. A plate of churros, a café solo, thick and dark, a brandy. Feeling better, he sets out. Granada has changed in 20 years, but not that much. Besides, he can see the bull ring. According to his map, the hospital is on the other side of it. The bull ring, he thinks, slowing. Roars, rising and falling, conducted by a red cape and a stick. The matador is young, nervous, but local, so the crowd olé his every pass. The picadors have done their job, gouged their lances deep into the bull's shoulder, his head lower with every run. Blood, wine, and a searing sun. Dad always insists on the cheap sol tickets unrelieved by shadows. Tom watches his father raise the wineskin, shooting a red arc into his mouth from near an arm's length. Tom's own ineptitude is clear in the stain on his t-shirt. The wineskin is offered again, refused. Had enough? I'll stay to the end. Ah, thanks. Ole! The matador completes his faena. A sharp turn jerks the bull around, twists its neck, drops it to his knees. The youth struts away to collect the killing sword, while his team goad the exhausted bull to its feet. Under his breath, please, oh Lord, a clean kill, a clean kill. When it's clean, when the sword drives into that coin-sized hole between the shoulder blades and slips into the hilt, ending the fight and the bull in an instant, Tom understands, can share the moment with his father, share Spain. But if it ends dirty, sword skittering down the flank, crowd booing, bull staggering, blood pouring from nose and neck, that way Tom won't look, and those bluest of eyes will mock him again. A hush. Red cloth moves under the bull's nose. The sightless eyes are static, filmed over. The bull won't move, so the matador adjusts his stance. Front foot up, he sights along the curling blade. Tom sees the steel wavering and knows what will happen. The blade slips into muscle, enters an inch, springs out. The bull moves now, and the man leaps beyond the horns as his team circle to confuse the animal, to lower its head for another attempt. Soon the bull will be on its knees again, and there will be nothing left but the short knife at the back of the neck, like piffing a frog in a science lab. Dad, let's go. It's not over. You know it's over. I'm going. Fucking go then. His father cups his hands, jeering with the crowd. Rubbing his eyes, refocusing on a grey arch, Tom circles the bull ring. Halfway around, white coats appear in a wide marble portico. He crosses over, enters the hospital. It's cool inside, dark. But it isn't the contrast that makes him feel faint, nor the smell of hospital, sterile tile and stone corridor. It's the eyes. Behind the reception desk, there's a giant painting. Angels hover near a bearded man who's raising someone from a bed. But he isn't looking at his patient. He's staring straight out. His gaze tracks Tom across the marble floor. Brown, compassionate, forgiving, loving. The eyes of Christ. Dígame. The voice is harsh. What? Dígame. A woman leans, fleshy forearms on her desk, on the plan of the hospital under plastic, condensation where her skin touches. On the instant, his serviceable Spanish is forgotten. Why is he here? What does he want? Habla inglés. No. She shakes her head, her ears glittering gold. Mi padre muerto. A muerte. She raises a finger. Momentito. She picks up a phone, presses a number, speaks. Death and other words, lost in rapid Andaluz. Momentito, senor. She gestures to a bench. He sits, White coats pass him, suits, a man on crutches, no other patients. Maybe this is an administration building only. Maybe. Good morning, senor. How may I be of service? The man is about Tom's age, thick black hair swept back and gleaming in oil. He has spectacles on the end of his nose and peers down them, head back, making him seem older. Tom holds out his hand. The doctor grips it, holds on longer than formality requires, as if taking his pulse. My father died in this hospital 3 years ago. Cancer? Yes. There was no... He was lapsed. Not a religious man. There was no funeral. This happens these days, senor. Under the thin nylon of the doctor's shirt, Tom glimpses a gold cross. He gave his body for medical research. Yes? There was coldness in the reply, suspicion. Tom hurries on. I wondered, I'd like to know what became of it. Him. His body? Behind him, the clock is loud. Tom glances at it, meets Christ's eyes, looks back. 3 years, a long time. Yes, The doctor lifts a hand. Senor, we keep records. We are a teacher hospital. It is most likely that one of the students, you understand. This study, it is not very nice to a not doctor. Entiende? You understand? Tom nods. If he could lie down, he could sleep now. He half turns away. Also, there are the transplants. Tom feels something in his neck, like a knife pushed in an inch, then withdrawn. Transplants? See, hearts, lungs, the kidneys, but you said cancer, so maybe not transplants. Tom swallows. Eyes? Eyes? A shrug. It is possible if they were good. Someone says 20/20, even at 60. Maybe he does. The doctor smiles, sudden white in the brown face, a flash of gold. I see, you wish to know if your father benefited, is this the word? Benefited someone. In death there is also life. Yes? Entiendo. This is not so strange. We have families, boys in accidents, mothers who wish to know the heart beats on, yes? He nods and takes Tom's arm. Come, we look to the records. Then you will be able to sleep, yes? Reluctant, eager, now clear, now muzzy, Tom follows. Down the passage lies an answer. He'll leave this hospital, this city, this country. It would be enough. It would have to be enough. In an office, the doctor rummages in a file cabinet. 3 years. Long time. He pulls out a folder, goes to the window light, holds the file to himself, head tilted back, peering down his nose, while Tom reads and rereads his own last name scrawled across one corner. The doctor mutters, mouthing words, fingers shuffling papers. Finally, he looks up, smiles, and closes the file. You can be happy, senor. Your father's eyes were excellent. Because of him, a young man, blind for 3 years, again sees the wonder of God's world. He is heading back to the file cabinet when Tom blocks him. May I? The doctor flinches, steps around him, replaces the file, slams the drawer shut, locks it, rattles it. Regrets, senor. Other information is, how do you say this, secret? No. Confidential. Exactly. Confidential. He takes Tom's arm again, not as gently, holds it all the way back to the lobby. Christ beams. The clock ticks. The receptionist's arms make a sucking sound as she lifts them from the plastic. And now, thank you so much, doctor. Muchas gracias. The smile flashed gold. Por nada, senor. The heat makes Tom sway again. There is a cool place, he remembers, and he heads to it now, pays the pesetas, climbs the steps. At the entrance, he looks up at the inscription above. His Spanish may have all but deserted him, but this he knows by heart. Give him alms, woman, for there is nothing in life so painful, nothing, as the pain of being blind in Granada. He enters the Alhambra. It's still early enough, so tours haven't yet reached the Generalif, the gardens of the palace. Only a few people stroll the grass paths. He finds a secluded place, recently watered, drops falling from the leaves of the tree that shades the spot. He lies down. It's over, he thinks, and closes his eyes. Blue, like his father's. Thank God. Senor! Senor! Eyes above him, hazel, angry, pinhole pupils, a hand shaking him roughly by the shoulder, harsh sunlight behind the figure. Tom shades his eyes, sees a grey work shirt, a lined ochre face. The gardener has a hoe, and he pokes Tom with the butt end, jabbing him like a picador in the arena, as if he were an animal. Why, he was doing nothing wrong. This is outrageous. Tom grabs the hoe, uses the man's resistance to pull himself up. Then he jerks it away, raises it like an axe above his head. He hears someone say, "Leave me alone." Then, "I'm not going anywhere." Liar! Tom throws the hoe down at the little man's feet, turns from him, from the voice, from other voices. As he walks away, he sees his hotel room, sees himself packing, the plane to Madrid, the one to Vancouver. Leave Granada, leave Spain, leave. He goes back to the hotel, drinks 2 beers, sleeps a little, light and dreamless. Most of the time he lies with his hands behind his head, watching the ancient fan circle, tracing the plaster cracks on the ceiling. He doesn't even try to pray. Standing in the arch of the bullring again, he checks the time. 10 p.m. 2 hours he's been there, and though the flow of people from the hospital has slowed, it hasn't ceased. The doctor came out an hour before with a colleague. He heard his laugh, saw gold flash under the street lamp. No one comes for 5 minutes. Tom crosses the street. Through the glass door, he sees the night porter lay out things on the desk. A thermos, a thick bread roll, a sports newspaper. Then the man gets up and walks down a corridor. It's opposite the one Tom wants. He crosses the lobby, shoulders braced against a shout. But only Christ watches him. He meets one man who hurries past without a word. The door to the filing room is unlocked. There are no alarms, nothing hinders him until he comes to the cabinet itself. Pulling out the tire iron he's bought, he jams the flat end into the gap. It slips, catches the second time, there's a moment's resistance, a crack, then the drawer is rushing toward him on nylon runners. He waits a moment, but no one comes, so he flicks his flashlight. He holds it in his mouth and begins to rifle through the files. There are very few J's. He pulls his father's file out and lays it on the desk. He does not open it straight away, just stares at the name. Remembers how he heard the news of his father's illness, how he told himself he was unable to go, how busy he was, how 3 months later he heard his name called in the hotel lobby in Portland and knew in that instant that it was over. He thinks about the relief he felt and the guilt in feeling it, about the call to his mother, about how he called Gwen, tried to cry and failed, tried to pray and failed. How there was no funeral, no flowers to be placed, because there was nowhere to place them. He'd scarcely thought of any of this in 3 years, until the dreams began, and then he scarcely thought of anything else. The file isn't thick. His father's illness was short, the cancer diagnosed late. Tom backlights the x-rays, sees the dark shadows covering the lungs. Some scrawled notes, both writing and medical terms impenetrable. A photostat of a death certificate. The final page is the one he is looking for. He bends to consider. In the end, it is easy. There is the word Hoyos, followed by the word azul. He laughs. Blue. His father's eyes hadn't been blue. They'd been metal, steel, refracting and reflecting the racing thoughts, only still when they fixed on you for the second before they were off again, seeking distraction, objects to focus his love and hate upon, his hunger boundless for both. Azul. Opposite the inadequate word is a name. Tom closes the file, replaces it in the broken cabinet, closes the drawer, stands for a moment with his fingertips on the cool metal. Like the doctor, he now knows who looks at God's world through his father's eyes, and he knows where he lives. On the other side of the bull ring, there's a taxi stand. La Cartuja, Corrado, senor, is closed. Tom drops into the back seat. The driver shrugs, starts the meter. Slipping his hand into the pocket of his coat, Tom grips the tire iron and watches the city slip into suburbs. With another shrug, the driver takes his money and drives off. Tom stares up at the gate of the monastery of La Cartuja. High, crenellated walls gleam in the moonlight, and he walks along them, past them onto the street beyond, checking door numbers, then back the other side, ends up at the entrance again. The house number he wants is within the monastery. A sign gives the opening hours for what he remembers is a tourist attraction, as well as the centre of the Carthusian order of monks. The door is oak, iron-studded, unbudging. There's no bell. If he knocks, who would come? What would he say when they did? Tom follows the wall down, comes to a tree, uses it to shimmy up the wall. When he drops down the other side, he lands heavily, his ankle twisting. He falls onto his side, chokes his cry, writhes on the soft earth of a flower bed. It is his ligaments, torn before at soccer, at skiing. He remembers this pain and how the intensity would eventually fade. So he waits, biting his collar, gets to his feet. The first step is agony, the next a little less. He limps through a rose garden. It ends in a single-story structure, the bottom end of a larger building. He passes up the length of it, rattling windows, finds one ajar, reaches in, slips the catch, hoists himself over the sill. Moonlight pools under the windows. There are dark rectangles on the walls. His flashlight's beam finds a man's face, his eyes on the heavenly host above, smiling, despite the axe that evenly cleaves his tonsured head. The rest of the paintings are similar. Monks in the very moment of their martyrdom, oblivious to the spears and hatchets of the savages that surround them, their blood pooling under them like moonlight. The last one depicts a monk just blinded. The savages celebrate, unaware of their real defeat. For above them, a host of angels wait to escort the monk's soul to eternal glory. Tom sweeps the light up and down the canvas, but he cannot find the eyes. Back and forth, up and down, not a trace. Come. The sound is almost beside him. He jumps, flicking off the light. But it isn't a voice. It's a bell. Come, it tolls. And Tom now sees figures against lights that spill briefly from opened doors. A man silhouetted for a moment, then lost again to the dark. Shapes move past the windows where he crouches to the building ahead, into the chapel itself. Come, the bell asks him again. Through a door, into a stone antechamber. Halfway down that room, another door slowly closing. He crosses to it, steps inside just in time. Before him, a crowd of backs, brown swathed, cowls rolled over necks, a couple of suits. Welcome, the bell says in a longer and deeper knell that hangs above them like a cloud. The monks spread out, kneel. In an empty pew at the back, Tom kneels too. The chapel sparkles, 1,000 candles illuminating white stucco walls, Baroque plasterwork encrusted in silver, statues that seem alive, mother and child, angel and saint. The rich smell of incense makes him giddy. Then a single voice begins to chant, as sonorous as the bell, flowing like rich cream over the company who, in their turn, pick up the single clear line, gently repeat it back. The liturgy calms him, eases his ankle, the struggle of his lungs. He leans forward, places his head onto his hands, and prays. Prayer as dream, a flow of images that come so easily. Gwen, his mother, the Christ from the hospital. He sees each one as they are summoned by a phrase from that clear voice, blessed by each choral reply. Finally, he comes, his Father, and there are angels gathered about his head. Maybe he sleeps, dreamless, only becomes aware when people are moving past him, but he does not raise his head, and no one speaks to him. The door closes, returning the chapel to silence. Until the voice comes, the same one that had led the chanting, speaks above him, as near as a breath. Tom lifts his head to it and looks into his father's eyes. Oh, he'd recalled them in dreams. In nightmares, he'd seen them plucked from a head, dropped into a jar of formaldehyde, seen them narrow in fury or enlarge in pain when Tom hurt him, as he'd hurt him in those later years, payment for all those years before. He thought he'd known them, but he'd forgotten their radiance, the lightning flash, northern sky, summer's day wonder of them. All he'd seen in the years since their light went out was the structure, not the substance. And seeing them now, his own fill overflowed. And as he stands, he lifts the tire iron high above his head, high up, where the angels wait. They take it from him. He lowers his hand, and it meets the monk's hand rising up. Blue mirrors reflect 1,000 candles back and forth. He cannot remember why he's there, until he does. "Forgive me, Father," he whispers. The monk smiles, just like Tom remembers. "Por nada, my son." That's it. Thank you very much for listening to Where the Angels Wait, first published in Pulp Literature magazine. Thanks a lot.
Wow. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to all of you at home tuning in to watch StoryStream. If you'd like to see more episodes of StoryStream, please tune in to the Vancouver Public Library's YouTube channel and look for the StoryStream playlist. Next episode, Chris will be reading his short story, The Ankle Bracelet. For more information on upcoming events, services, and programs, please feel free to visit us at www.bpl.ca. Thanks for tuning in.